All right, hey everybody. So we're gonna do something a bit different here. We're gonna play a 5+3 game. It's pretty late, and the pool of players is smaller. So I was finding it very difficult to get paired for another 15+15 classical game. So we're gonna go for this preset option of 5+3. To be honest, I'm really not used to this flavor of time control at all. +3 is kind of a strange increment for me. Let's play something kind of flexible. So this, however, doesn't seem like a good move. And e5 would transpose into a typical mistake line. So this is actually going to be a good exercise here. So g6, we're going to give check and pick up the rook. But king e7 is almost worse. So we'll analyze the consequences of that after the game. So the question is, if I move my bishop, this might be annoying. This is dropping. Why don't I just go here? So the queen gets pushed back with tempo, can't take here. Yeah, so have to defend the knight. However, my idea now is rook e1, which was missed by my opponent. Trading the queen, yeah, so we have this pin going on. Let's take back, win the knight. So obviously this is going really fast, much faster than our 15+15 games. So at this point, I kind of want to win this bishop. So my opponent's playing very, very fast. So fast enough that they didn't even consider. Okay, so already a resigned game. So let's take a look at that. Everything happened faster than I could keep up with in the commentary portion. So I played knight f3, f6, and if any other move had been played, I probably would have played something more flexible like g3 or b3 or even d4 and get some sort of normal d4 opening. But f6 kind of stood out to me because it transposes into this kind of line. We can imagine that I had played e4, e5, knight f3, and then here, the same position. It's well known that this is a typical mistake because white has the fantastic opportunity here to just snap the pawn, and if black recaptures, then they face some pretty dire consequences, which is exactly what happened in this game. So I played e4 because it was a very normal move, normal developing move. It's like I'd played e4 and then knight f3, and I was expecting that this would be a mistake. So I take that and queen h5, and this is the point. The only way to block the check, as we saw in the game, loses the rook. And as I mentioned during the game, king e7 is worse. After takes, this is the only move. Bishop c4 check. And the king is getting kind of trapped here almost. I think that d5, sacrificing the pawn, is relatively best at this point because you might want this bishop to be active in the defense in a minute here. We can imagine a situation like this where the only other move is to move the king again. And the king gets shoved into the corner here. And I think there are options here. You can play d4. Obviously, we're uncovering check. Black, it's not checkmate. Black can block. So I think there's even the move h4 here. Although I would need to check this. There might be g6. So instead d4 is normal enough. and then I think here, and then h4 actually. So yeah, this is just my memory, going off by my memory here. Looks like h4 and g4, or g4. So if I play d4, yeah, it's similar. h4, yeah, we've got forced checkmate coming here, and I don't feel like I need to know any of these forced lines. It's just every move kind of speaks volumes here. You know, opening up the rook against the king, preparing bishop takes. It's just, yeah, and then even here, king can't run away. And this is better than bishop takes because we got the double checkmate. So just totally undesirable, obviously. So this is what I mean by g6 is like the lesser of two evils, but immediately we get we get 2 pawns and a rook for the knight, and black is going to get 1 pawn back. So that's where this evaluation comes from. This is just terrible. I guess we can leave the computer on here. It did like king d1, bishop e2. Maybe black has some sort of annoying threats, and with king d1, we can play rook e1 or have rook e1 threats, and pinning the queen to the king. That's also exactly what happened during the game. This was overlooked by black. So far, and in fact, instead of just throwing that on, I should just request a computer analysis, and it would give us all the evaluations right away. It looks like I played a pretty clean game. And that's kind of what happens when your opponent makes all these mistakes that just kind of hang pieces. You don't really have to think about taking pieces. So no surprise here at all. Let's play one more game. That was short. So we'll throw ourselves back into this 5+3 pool. That was exciting, right? It was very quick compared to the other games. Also, it didn't really feel like it was a real exercise there because my opponent just fell for something that I'd basically memorized. Although all of it makes sense, so unfortunate for them. We'll try knight f3 again. I don't expect we'll see f6 again. Our opponent's higher rated this time. Let's play maybe g3. So it's up to black to decide whether they want to maybe copy us a bit or establish themselves a bit differently. So I'm going to play c4. This was a little premature. It didn't have to play in this way. Maybe we'll see e5. We would have seen, if they wanted this, what we would call the King's Indian defense setup, we would have seen this eventually, but so here I can play e4, I can play d4, I can play neither, I can play d3, I think I'm attracted to just not playing this in a way that black would be familiar with. So rook b8, we want to prepare the launching of our pawn and maybe just step off of this diagonal for future tactical concerns. So this is kind of like reacting to a threat I haven't even made yet. This is something I like to see. I'm going to play my pawn here. And probably the other pawn as well. Part of the reason why I'm launching these pawns here is because I might make my bishop more powerful. This is a bit of a strange, well, it's not strange. Black clearly wants to play f5, but by doing this, they let me plant my knight in here. And it's not really clear like what his pawn center is going to be doing. It's just natural to get the pawns in front of the knight. The knight will probably come back. But I think my plan has more bite to it. This doesn't make a great deal of sense to me. because this is going to be an important bishop. Notice that this bishop is the one that's unobstructed by pawns. And it's just very easy for me to get him to give away the bishop. The question though, so this is important that my knight's protected. I'm not just dropping my knight. The question is, if he takes, how do I recapture? This way is, well, we can, I guess now we'll just analyze that in the after the game. That was me mincing the words in the end and after the game. I believe my knight should just come back to this square. I don't know why I'd put it on e3. I'd rather have it control some of these light squares. Not get in the way of my bishop. And also, if his knight comes in, we need to be able to kick that back as well. So black has an open file. I mean, our rook just sits here and defends. We can play here if we need to. And something important to note now is that with the bishops gone, this square is suddenly a lot weaker. It's harder for black to maybe jump in with the knight or something of that nature. Notice that this is just unprotected. And it's, okay, so if he plays like rook b8 to kind of take some sort of preventative, some sort of prudent move to protect b7, well, you've lost a move as well. And with the rook off the file, I'm more inclined to maybe open up some of these pawns since I'm not opening up your rook for you. So things to think about. Also, I can try to force the knight away. Maybe the knight has to come sit on the edge of the board where it doesn't want to be, and just in order to protect this pawn. So let's do that. I would prepare it first, but if takes, I'm going to take back with the rook, putting more pressure on this pawn. This pawn is defended by my knight, so I'm not worried about it. He can't play the natural b6 because the knight would drop. So we're going to see some sort of move. If rook here, I can attack that rook. If queen here, then I'm going to start piling more pieces on the square and force a decision. So things are flowing pretty nicely here. If he ever makes a discovered attack against my knight, I just will take it, even if he takes this pawn. It's totally fine. So, not sure what black should be doing to defend this pawn. Rook b8 is a pretty sad move to have to make, to take yourself off of this open file. It's really just admitting that you're on your back foot, so I don't think that there's any appealing option. So queen c8 was played. Oh, maybe I'm being a bit too quick here. There would have been a fork. So, with that in mind, I could play bishop here or pawn here, and that might give him time to go knight here. But he still can't play b6 right away because the rook hangs. So let's do that. This will allow me to play queen here or here. Without worrying about knight to d4. Queen b1, I wouldn't have to worry about knight d4, but I prefer queen to b3 because then my rook could also be involved. If knight here, of course I'll jump in with my my queen. And like I said before, I still wouldn't be able to play here. Maybe would be able to play c6. That might be possible. But then the knight's tied down to defending. My rook can sit on b6. I can still be annoying. But that might be the only course of action here for black, to play knight here. So this, I mean, okay, so I said I would take if this happened, so let's just take. Got to protect this knight. I didn't have to. It's also possible that I could have gone here. So like now, if I go here, he might actually have rook b2 to trade some pieces, since it's defended by the bishop. So, and if I go here, he might have rook a1. This is interesting. So what should I do? Maybe neither? Where would I go otherwise? I'm not really sure. Sorry for my silence here. I'm not even really calculating anything. I'm just kind of looking for possibilities for my pieces, and I'm coming up kind of blank. Oops, didn't mean to highlight that. So I could go here, stop any sort of piece of black's coming to the square, play queen up, and then play rook here. I don't think that that's a bad idea. My queen will sit here, continuing to defend this square. If anything, I think I'd just have a nice time advantage and some, just really posing some questions to black. This still isn't resolved. If this is played now, I can make some sort of opportune sacrifice. Maybe if I'm not even winning material, I can mess up the structure here. So, yeah, this is a huge concern for black. So like here, I can take now. And if queen takes, I have a discovered check. I win the queen. However, I need to be able, if here and then here, blocking the diagonal, I have knight here, protecting the rook. So that was my calculation. It's a bit surprising. This is another pawn. Now this is guarded very well. We're attacking the rook, and now the rook is defended again. So let's take it. And that's game over. So I felt like that was pretty clean. We're going to throw in the computer analysis a bit faster this time. So we got 2 white games back to back. So yeah, with the faster games, the more inaccuracies I'll have. Although I think I did have a game or 2 of the slower chess that had many mistakes. So let's start from the beginning. This is just a non-committal way of playing. And here I could easily transpose into more well-trodden lines with a move like d4, And actually, I was going to follow it up with another move, but yeah, d4 I think would be most well trodden. c4 is fine. Now if I play d4, like if we flip on the book here, we can see that the d4, not only is it the most popular move from this position, when we enter the other positions, it goes up by thousands of games. So knight c3, e5, yeah, and then d3. It's funny, it's the computer's calling out d3 as maybe a slip of advantage, but it's still the most common move. And I believe we're in the master's database. Maybe this is true. Maybe d4 is a slightly better move. But I wouldn't call this a real inaccuracy. It's not like it's really better for black. Equal maybe. These statistics are pretty close even for most of the main moves. So in some cases white is slightly better. In some cases it's just about dead even. In some cases black is slightly better. Knight c6 and rook b1 was the most common move, and it's no surprise because we don't really know where we want to put the bishop. We don't need to commit to some sort of pawn structure just yet. And if we did play these lines with e4, we'd rather have this knight be on e2, not obstructing our f pawn. And so barreling down the queenside pawns, we can see that our bishop goes down this way, our pawns point in this way. It's not that much of a stretch of the imagination to think, okay, I should be pushing my pawns over here. a6 is kind of like inviting me to sorry, I got distracted here. These are some big names from the older generation players. Anatoly Karpov, obviously famous former world champion. Bent Larsen, also very famous, although not world champion. And back in 1975, these were about as high as ratings got. So b4, just following through, knight h5, knight d5. All these moves make sense. Bishop e6, knight g5. Yeah, h6, I was already willing to take here, even without being prompted to do so. So it makes sense that this is just a loss of time. Notice that the computer preferred the recapture with the pawn. This is what I was going to talk about in the game, but I didn't have time to because he took so quickly. Even though we shut up our bishop, we open up this file on this weak pawn, and it's just so hard for black to defend because they can never push it forward without reopening our bishop. So we can just focus more and more of we can double our rooks, we can figure out how to put more pressure on this pawn, and black just plays a miserable defending game. So that would have been problem with that would have been how I would have recaptured. I think even though bishop takes leaves the bishop open, you feel like you just traded a pair of pieces, which eased black's defensive tasks. You may as well get some sort of favorable imbalance out of it. So, no choice but to take. I liked knight c3. Yeah, and this felt all right with this pressure on the b7 pawn. e4. So I missed a tactic here. Yeah, absolutely, I missed a tactic here. I could have taken, and then I would have had some sort of queen b1 based tactic because the king would have been exposed. I missed that completely. That's not easy to see because it comes out of nowhere. Without really, I'll flip on the computer in a second, but just to see. Like for instance, I could just take here. And at this point, I would have been only one pawn, but almost effectively two pawns because these are kind of quartered off to the side. This is very weak. I get to keep both of these. This would have been an excellent situation for white. I've got the pair of bishops. Maybe we would have seen this move next, but even so, let me see if that would have been the computer's top line in the event of g takes h5. Interesting. So queen b1 first. Do we? Oh, of course we have. Rather than just winning a pawn, we're winning the rook entirely, which basically means we won this knight for free because we're now threatening to discover check and win the queen. So that's much stronger. This would have been nice, but this would have been winning. So yeah, so d5. Even here, I calculated the consequences of this, and I knew that I was much better being up a few pawns and having this pressure. So I don't fault myself for missing that really nice tactic. And we get, yeah, just giving up the rook is, I guess you call it like the final nail in the coffin. So these were some good games. I didn't think I'd be playing Blitz on this account for a long time, if at all. But you know, when it's late at night and there's no one to play with, everyone can be found playing Blitz. So thank you for watching. Hopefully you got something out of it. Maybe I'll make some shorter, more digestible videos in the future of single Blitz games with analysis. But for now, we'll leave it at here.